Okay. Okay, so good morning, everybody. If you have a laptop, I'd love for you to close the lid so you can stay with us on what we're up to. And what I'd like to talk to you first about is color modes and text wraps. So let's talk about color modes first because it's going to become extremely significant to the work you do in this class. And how many people know what I always laugh when I see this little YouTube video. How many people know what CMYK stands for? Raise your hand. All right. So most of you do. For those of you who don't know what it stands for stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And if you look at your screen right here where it says CMYK, you can see the words I just described. And cyan obviously is turquoise. Magenta is the pink color. Or red-ish, yellow, and the black is K. We're not sure why. Yeah, Thomas.
Why is it that the center of the RGB as opposed to the CMYK is white and then black?
Oh, this is so great. Why is it the center? So I'm repeating only because I now have this video thing going. I'm repeating it because why is the center of RGB white and the center of CMYK black? That's perfect. Great lead-in. Great question. So RGB is what your monitors display with, what your video displays with, what web images are made up of, RGB. Right, exactly, Sunny. I'll say that in a minute. So red, green, blue is RGB. And it's called additive color. So the more you add color, right, where all of those images overlap, they become white. So if you took a magnifying glass to your computer display, your monitor, or your television set or whatever, and you looked at it at a, kind of through a loop at a super close-up level, you notice that the white area is 100% saturation of red, green, and blue. And it creates light, and therefore it is additive color to create light. Where just the opposite happens with CMYK, it's called subtractive color, where the more color you add, like when you pour paint together, keep pouring different colors of paint together, you get a murky black or gray or dark muddy color. That's called subtractive color because it subtracts light. That's why.
So one would be an actual substance as opposed to light.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. I mostly remember my reference is either watching my daughter in preschool or remembering myself as a kid in kindergarten where all the kids would mix the wrong color brushes in the little paint cans, so the paint cans wouldn't be, blue or yellow anymore. They'd start to turn black and muddy. The more color you add, the more you're subtracting the light. And you can think of the light as even the whiteness of the paper, for example, if that helps you. You thought of one as digital and you thought of one as physical, and that's a good analogy too. Yeah.
I think they make it K and CMYK because if you put B, people think it's blue.
Oh, so Sunny said the reason why the word black is K is because if you put it B for black, you'd think it was blue. There's a few references. One person once told me there was a word in German that means black, but nobody I know knows what that word could be. The other one is the fact that K used to stand for key line. When you make your registration marks and you have your crop marks, they used to refer to the K as key line. So that's the one that makes the most sense to me. I'm not sure. We don't really have the answer. So I'm going to put this on pause and show you my very goofy, very silly YouTube video. There you go. I told you it was silly, right? There's a lot of but one summer I went YouTube crazy with all of my lectures because there's so many fun things out there. So that was one of the ones that I saw. Mostly I liked it because I thought it was silly, but also I liked watching the color blending. As a matter of fact, before I move on to the next thing, I'm going to let you see this video on CMYK. RGB color versus process color, and then I'll get into these examples and spot colors. So here's one more to go. Let me pause this. Okay, that's actually a super good video in my opinion. You know, Damien, you can't see very well, can you? Maybe you can share somebody's monitor when I turn these lights on. Let me turn it a little lower. What I pulled out of the cabinet for you are a couple things. These are both publications that are printed with process color, which is CMYK. And we're ultimately going to work with files that we convert from RGB color, which is how our digital cameras take pictures and how things are scanned because it has a larger color spectrum. And then we convert them to CMYK. So I'm going to pass these around, and you can look at them with this loop. And the way you use a loop is basically like this. You set it up so it looks like that. Put the artwork on your desk so it's stable. Set the loop down and bring your eye to it. And what you're looking for is you're looking for how CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, sit side by side and not on top of each other. Let me see if that illustration's here. No, it's not. You're going to be looking for something called a halftone, and you're going to see a bunch of little CMYK dots, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and they sit beside each other. So for example, if I look at this publication and I look at this purple page, it's printed probably by using cyan, the turquoise color, and magenta, the red color, and you might see a tiny bit of black and you might see a tiny bit of yellow, but probably not. You're mostly going to see yellow dots. I'm sorry, you're mostly going to see magenta dots and cyan dots. And for example, if you look at this yellow grid right here on this publication, you're probably only going to see yellow dots, very saturated yellow dots, maybe a little pink, a little magenta. So take a look and you'll understand how CMYK creates the illusion of full color. It's useful for you. And then the other thing I'm going to pass around is these Pantone swatch books, because they're referred to as Pantone Matching System Color. And I have samples of those for you here. And Pantone Matching System Color is basically like when you go to the paint store and you pick out a color you like. You take this fan book right here, getting the right one. You take this fan book and you'll notice that there's ink samples in there. And the ink samples on, let's see, this book is a super old book. The ink samples in this book are printed on both shiny paper, which is coated paper, and paper that's not shiny, which is uncoated paper. And if you found the same number on the uncoated stock as you do on the coated stock, you'll see that the ink looks different. It's the difference between a paper that absorbs the ink and kind of dulls the color and a paper where the ink sits more on the surface. And you'll also notice that each of these Pantone numbers, they're given a number. So if I wanted, for example, this green that I'm holding up in my artwork, I would specify it, and this number happens to be 3395. So I would locate 3395 in my color selector, which you're going to learn how to do in a couple weeks, and apply that color. And this is a universal color. For example, if I were sending my artwork to Hong Kong, for example, to be printed, I would still use Pantone Matching System Color. It's universal, it's international, everybody knows the formula. You'll also notice that next to the number there's like a recipe, for lack of a better description. It'll say 15 parts of green and 1 part of yellow. And that formula is what creates that green. Because a printer, if you look at how many swatches are in here, a printer can't have a can of ink for every one of these. It would cost them a fortune for starters. They'd get old, and it just isn't cost effective. So there's basically a primary set of ink colors, which you'll see in the front of these swatch books right here. And this primary set of colors basically is what you mix and match to create the swatches throughout the book. So you'll see it. You'll see that you'll pick a green, and like if that green was 15 parts green and 1 part white, you'll notice that up the row there might be 15 part greens, 1 part white, and 1/8 of a part black for a deep and darker green. So take a look at this. I'll pass those around too. And spot colors are primarily used for, well, they're more economical. Obviously, if you're using one spot color, sorry, I want to make sure I'm giving you all the right books here. All right. Here's a book that's uncoded and coded, separated out. Anyway, what I was going to say is spot colors are generally selected for logo designs, so you create a brand identity with your spot color. It's also more cost effective. If you print with CMYK, you're committed to printing with 4 colors every time, which means 4 printing plates every time, which means a larger press that can accommodate 4 printing plates. So therefore, if you want to economize, you're probably going to design a logo that might be 1 color or 2 color if you're doing offset printing. If you're designing a website, obviously color is no problem because it's an RGB display and full color won't cost you more. And also with digital printing, once you've made a commitment to 1 color, full color doesn't make a difference with digital printing either. You've already made the commitment, unless it's just black, 1 color. So you're going to become really familiar with Pantone matching system color in a couple weeks. But until then, I want to call attention to this little image at the bottom of the screen, which shows you something called color gamut. And color gamut basically refers to the range of color, the color spectrum. So the largest range of color that we can capture is the visible color spectrum, what we see with our eye. Next to that, the next largest color gamut, range of color, is RGB, which is why we take our photographs in RGB, our digital photographs, which is why we scan our images in RGB, which is why on that little video they discussed color correcting your images in RGB. But did you notice in the video when he took an image that was RGB and he converted it for printing to CMYK, how the color shifted? Did you guys notice that in those overlapping circles? Yeah, CMYK cannot, and if you look down here, CMYK is the smallest color gamut. So visible color is the largest. Next to that, you can capture the most colors with RGB. And then next to that, spot colors, those ink swatches I'm passing around, that's your next largest color gamut, your next largest range of color that you can create when you print something. And then the smallest color gamut is process color. And we don't think of it that way because we think of all the images we look at printed with process color and we think of it as full color. But it just can't capture some of the really special colors. If you, for example, were doing an ad for Ferrari, I mean, what color Ferrari would you want, Carlos? Red. Is there any other color for Ferrari, right? No. So if you're printing a poster to promote Ferrari and you can't get that beautiful, deep, wonderful, flashy Ferrari red, you might end up printing your poster with process color, with CMYK, but you might add a spot color of 2 different reds to enhance the saturation of the red of that car. Because heck, if you're selling a Ferrari, what do they cost, Carlos, do you know? Like 300 G's, like, okay, so $250,000, $500,000, heck. Let's buy the one with a $500,000 because we put new added things on it, right? So if you're spending, you know, $500,000 for a car, what's the big deal to add a couple more inks when you're printing a poster to promote the car, right? So you got to consider who your market is and what your budget is. But that's how you would enhance. That's where you would use a spot color to enhance and ultra saturate an image. So that's pretty much color modes. Understanding the difference between RGB and CMYK, that's really the foundation here. RGB is for your monitor, for your internet, for your web design, and CMYK is process color printing. CMYK, process color means the same thing. Okay, everybody clear about that? Yeah? And then spot color is where you're specifying a certain ink. I am going to show you this if you want. I'm going to send around this swatch book too. This swatch book is going to show you what a spot color looks like compared to if you try to recreate that spot color, in other words, that can of ink color, and you convert it to what process color. So you'll look, for example, at this red right here, which is red 032, and it's got this beautiful orangey magenta look. But if you had to convert that Pantone color, the ink that came out of the can, right, or the one that was made with special inks to match it, just that color, and you converted it just to a CMYK formula to get a close approximation, you'll see it's super different. Like some of them look really close, and some of them, look at those two pinks at the top of this swatch, right? One looks totally muddy and murky, and one looks very pure and pink. So I'll pass it around, and it'll make you realize that with CMYK, you're just not able to capture the reach of color that you can with spot colors. Any questions about that? No? Okay, good. Then we'll come back here to something that's loads of fun that you're going to have a really good time with, which is in your Chapter 7 assignments, as a matter of fact, and that's text wraps in InDesign. And text wraps, just by looking at the screen, add interest and create a more exciting layout. And when you have a heavy page of text, often you'll break up text by putting a pull quote in. In other words, you'll have a little text box where you enlarge some important aspects of text, and you'll wrap your text blocks around it. Or you might have a graphic to create more interest. Or last week when we talked about that alarm clock in the design layout, or was that on Monday? Anyway, Monday. So when we talked about that alarm clock in the layout, and we talked about how you could wrap the text around it and pull it off the page and create more space, I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we'll have lots of time this morning. I can see that you'll be able to work in InDesign and get a better handle on everything. Thank you. What do you guys think of the halftones? Kind of fun to look at? Yeah, interesting. Okay, let me pull up InDesign here. There's a video, if you don't remember what I demonstrate here regarding text wraps. There's a video in InDesign which will demonstrate how to work with text wraps, but it's very straightforward. So I'm not even going to pull up an assignment because it's pretty simple. So let me pull up a new InDesign document here. And I'm going to turn off facing pages. And like I said, start getting accustomed to building your pages with leads. Let me get this background information off of here. There we go. So when you create your InDesign document, first off, this is kind of a mess, isn't it? I'm going to cancel this and I'm going to reset Advanced Workspace so I can clean it up and set my two columns. And now, and remember, when you start a document in InDesign, make sure that you don't have this black stroke active like that. Make sure the stroke has no fill, no stroke to it. Also, once you're on your own computer, you can always set your preferences to inches and it'll stay. It doesn't always do that here in class. And if I make a new document in InDesign, always show more options so you can see what's available to you, and get accustomed, no matter what you do, to set up a document with 1/8 of an inch bleed all around. Margins default is 1/2 inch. You can choose what you want to do. And have you set up columns and gutters? You have. You did in that last assignment with a bank ad. But you know, you can use these columns just as a guide. They're only guides. And I want to call attention to the fact that the default gutter is, I don't know really what that measures. It's more than 1/8 of an inch and less than 3/8 of an inch. When I create gutters, I'm generally up here in 3/8 of an inch. Often I'll go to 1/2 inch, depending on the size of my page, just for reference. And I'm going to turn off facing pages and we'll see what our document looks like. Now, text wrap is very simple. Text wrap is this. If I have a block of text, I'm going to fill this with placeholder text. I have a document here. Does anybody know how I can turn this into a 2-column text box?
Top right, underneath where it says Advanced, the 3 columns, click up.
Oh man, don't you know that? And then I can change my gutter right here, right? And I'll make it 2.5 inch, which now lines up with my margins. Now text wrap's pretty simple. Let me show you a couple different things. Let's say this is an article here, and it's obviously, if we view it, that is a lot of text to put your eyes on, right? It's heavy, it's dense. Just by using the type tool, creating a text box, and creating a significant little quote, I can take this text box, I can move it on top of my text here, I can go to Window, Text Wrap, and I get this little panel that shows up. And with this little text box active, this is a text box I created, just look at the symbols right here. You can see no text wrap. Here's where I wrap around the bounding box of my text. Here's where I wrap around an unusual shape, which could be any shape given. In this case, it's just a rectangle. This is where you don't wrap around the sides of it, but you go above it and below it. So you jump the object box, and this is where you jump the object box and you move on to the next column. See that? I mean, they're pretty obvious. So we'll choose this one, which wraps around the bounding box. And then notice this chain link is active to make all settings the same. And if I incrementally increase the wrap, you see I have a little guide that exceeds the boundary of this text box. And that's how far away, that's the distance I'm creating surrounding my text box. So for example, let me do it like this. Let me get rid of my text wrap here where it touches the edge. Let me fill my text box with a color. Let me fill it with a color. Now that doesn't look very good with the text touching the trim. It's kind of like having the text touching a box that has a stroke on it. It doesn't look good. So this is why I would take this box, make it active, go to my text wrap panel, and incrementally increase the the distance from the text box. And you've created an interesting layout. And then here, for example, I could highlight my text. I could make it 24 points. I could center it. I can change the leading to be 36 points. And I can go to Object Text Frame Options. And I can center my text in the box vertically. And I can use soft returns and make this text break up wherever I want. And I can make my text, for example, here white. And now you've got a more interesting layout to a heavy, dense page of text, right? Okay, there's something else that's kind of fun. Now, let's say, let me do something different. Let me go take an image and change this from being a text box and go to File, Place, and let me place one of our images here. That's probably the CD cover image. And it's going to fill the text box, or it should have anyway. Let me do it differently. Let me go to Command D. Let me place the CD image. My cursor loads with the image. I'm going to click and drag and place the CD cover here. Now, let's say I add a text wrap to this CD cover image. So with the object box active, I can create the text wrap like I just did and create a distance from where the text touches the text box. Now let's say I wanted to put a caption right here on my CD cover. So here's an active text box, and you can see it. And if I type in this active text box, this is a CD cover, you can't see my text. You can't see me typing. You see this little red overflow. Can anybody guess why you can't see my text here?
Too large?
No, my default type would be 12 points.
Should be behind the...
Could it be behind it? Yeah, the text box could be behind it, but it's not. Good guesses. These are both good guesses. Anybody want to take another guess? Say again, what? Because the column thing is bumping it out of the way? That's a good guess, too. No? Who said something else? Yes. The text could be yellow. That's true. We couldn't see the text because it's yellow. That's true. But my default typing was black. You can see my text tool is black. Okay, you guys all had fabulous guesses. I love them. This is really interesting. I will tell you, I spent months trying to figure out where to locate what I'm going to show you in seconds. The reason why the text isn't showing is because we made this yellow CD cover box a text wrap. So the text has to, the text cannot touch this CD cover, right? But we put a text box on top of the CD cover, but the CD cover says, I want no text near me, except around that boundary I created, correct? So what happens is this text box right there, the one I typed the caption, I have to override the text wrap. So I have to go to Object, Text Frame Options with that text box active. Look how simple this is. And I have to tell that text box to ignore the text wrap. And now my text shows. Now, I used to set up, remember I talked about this software called Quark? It was super logical in Quark. I find this incredibly obscure location for this really important override. So if you are setting up text and you are putting a text box near a text wrap, this is what happens. The text won't show. I can't tell you how many times I've worried about that. Now that I know where it is, obviously I'm good. So that's how you would set up a caption here. And you can see how it looks without the guides. Now the other thing is, let me try something different. Somebody help me with some image they want of something fun that has, let's stick on our Ferrari mode, right? This is for Carlos and I, right? Would that be the car you pick? Sure, thank you, okay. If it wasn't, all right, let's pick, let's pick the Ferrari motorcycle because it'll show you pretty well exactly what I want to accomplish. So I'm going to go to this website, and as I always like to say, I am stealing an image. So I'm going to click this Ferrari motorcycle, and I'm going to drag it to my desktop because I'm going to place it in this little file I'm creating here. So let me get rid of my boring CD cover compared to a Ferrari motorcycle. And with nothing active, I'm going to go to File, Place. I'm going to locate the image I pulled off the internet, the Ferrari motorcycle. I'm going to open it. My cursor is going to load, and I'm going to place it on my page right here. And I'm going to scale it down. So I'm going to scale down my box just like this. And for those of you who aren't clear about object fitting, I made my box smaller. Now I can go to Object Fitting, and I can fit the content proportionally inside this box, right? There's my Ferrari. Now, notice no text is wrapping around my Ferrari. So I make my object box active. I'm going to apply a wrap around the object shape. So it's wrapping around the box the Ferrari image is in. However, if I go to Contour Options, it's going to detect the edges of my image for me, mostly because I got this clean white background for this photograph. And it's going to wrap around the shape of the Ferrari itself. Can you see it made these little vector shapes for the shadow wherever it saw pixels in that image? And therefore, what it's going to do is it's going to wrap around my Ferrari image. And notice that my bounding area right here is wrapping around the shape, and I can incrementally change it to wrap around the box. Let me send this to the back. Let me go to Object, Arrange, and Send to back and see if it still works. There. See how it wraps around the Ferrari shape? And it makes a far more interesting layout. The problem is, let's look back here, you have to be super careful when you get weird things like that because you don't want to break up words randomly and create weird hyphenation. It makes it hard to read because you're going to read across the line and have to go to these two letters here. Yeah, Thomas?
I was going to say, could you just turn off hyphenation?
You can turn off hyphenation, but you might have a word to, T-O, and you're still stuck. So you have to be really careful when you set up text wrap for how things read. Now, there's a couple ways to deal with that because this does not read well, and actually this does not read well. You don't want a column of text wrapping around that like that. What you'd probably do, what you'd probably do is, let me get that Ferrari box. what you probably do is take the Ferrari image and probably have it come into your page like this. And the other thing you can do is this. Let me show you in normal mode. If I go around and click on the Ferrari image with my white arrow, my selection tool, my direct selection tool, notice that it created this little vector graphic around the Ferrari. I can go with my white arrow selected, the direct selection tool, and I can grab that little anchor point and I can kind of tweak things here. So I've got a wrap that suits me better. Okay, and being careful about it, this is one way to do it. You can just randomly pull the points till you like how it wraps. That's not too bad, right? The other choice I would have is this. I could certainly use my pen tool and create a shape that I want to wrap around the Ferrari. Okay, but isn't that cool? So pretty, so pretty. Any questions about text wrap or how you'd use it? So if we come back to the lecture, come back to the lecture. So this is 2-column text, and there's text wrap around each of these shapes. And you'll find lots of uses for it. You know, let's say you decide that you want, you know, to put a little graphic in here. We'll put our car back in there, our motorcycle. Whoops. Sorry. Yeah. Let's say you want a little graphic to start, or a drop cap letter or something like that, and you want to create a wrap around it. You create a more interesting layout. There's lots of uses for it. The problem is, even here, you have this paragraph. Don't let a random word break here. What you might want to do is, you know, change your bounding box so you keep your paragraphs together. And that's just design. That's just a good judgment call. Any question about how to use text wrap? The only other thing is in your assignment, let me just go to your assignment for your text wrap assignment. You'll notice down here, you're going to do this hamburger assignment, which is really tiny. What we're looking for here is for you to understand, the whole purpose of this is for you to understand how text wraps around an object shape. So the object's your hamburger. Here's the text set up below it. Here's the text box where the hamburger has a wrap around it and the text breaks up. And here's how to make the text break differently. Either go behind it without the text box or something. Okay? You'll read the instructions for that. The only other thing I want to call attention to is you're going to be doing this firefighter assignment. And you know, I think what I might do, what time is it, 9 o'clock? Would you like me to demo the firefighter assignment right now? It's actually a long demo because this is a step and repeat raffle ticket demo. Or would you like me to do that on Monday for you? So raise your hand if you want me to do it now, if you're just ready to hang in there and get it going. Okay, and I'll do it. Okay, so back to it. Hamburger's about text wrap. The firefighter assignment, you're going to be doing a poster, a fold over invitation, the front and the back of it. I'm sorry, the front and the inside of it. And then you're also going to do raffle tickets. And the raffle tickets are pretty complicated. So let me show you the highlights from each of these, okay? Let's close this up. Y'all got text wrap. You're clear about that one. You'll have fun with it. I think I would like that Ferrari motorcycle. I don't know about you guys, but yeah. Anybody in here have a motorcycle? Yeah, you do? Is that what you ride to school?
Not yet.
Oh,
It's a good chance.
it's fun.
A light cycle.
Okay, so here we are into chapter 7 already. And I want to call attention, most of this is pretty straightforward, this assignment for the poster, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But what I want to call attention to is a couple points. One is, notice that the image of the firefighter equipment bleeds off the left bottom edge of the document. So make sure that you set up your document with bleeds and make sure that you position this graphic so it bleeds off as you see it here. The other thing is when you read the content of this text, again, you always have to proofread your text. Notice that there's italics in the text and make sure that you do that. Also notice that there's no hyphenation in the text. And, pardon me, what's that?
Looks like there's an M dash
And there's an M dash where in the time?
18 to 10,
10 to 18. Actually, it's probably not an M dash. Normally when you're doing numbers and you don't use a hyphenation, you're using an N dash, which is a little shorter. But the one thing I do want to show you, which I think for most of you is pretty clear, let me highlight the word courage here. And I'm copying it. And I'm going to make a document, and I'm just going to make this tabloid size. And I'm also going to make sure to make it have 1/8 of an inch bleed all around. And here's my document, okay? And if we just take a look at this poster, notice that the bottom word courage is black. Let me zoom in here. The bottom word courage is black. The one behind it is gray. It's a tint of black. The one on top of the gray is a tint of the red. And notice that this A in the red and the R, you can see the other one behind it. So this is also a tint of red. And if we look at the instructions here, they have made the words, what they did is they had you put the images on layers. And that's your call if you want to set this up with layers. It actually doesn't matter to me. But notice that they're transparent layers, 20%, 60%, 20%. So if I were to come back to my document and I were going to take the word courage here, I'd make a text box. I'm pasting the word courage, which looks like it has all kinds of stuff with it. So I'm just going to type it instead. I think I spelled it wrong. And maybe it's 72 point. We'll just make it 72 point. Oh, I didn't spell it wrong. Okay. Let's make it 100 point so you can see it. There. So now here's the word courage in black. If I hold my Option key down, I'm duplicating my text box, right? Everybody gets that? I can now take the word courage and I can change the opacity of my text, not by changing the tint of the color here, not by going here to my swatch panel. I can change the tint of my color, but it doesn't make it transparent, right? Let's take a look here. It's not transparent. So instead, let me highlight the, not the word, but the text box for this word courage. I would go to Window, I would go to Effects, and I would change the opacity of this text box to 20%. And because it's black, you can't see it. But if I now take this gray text here and I change my text in the box to be red, remember this text box has an opacity of 20%. Do you all remember that? So notice that you can see the black through it. If I also take the same text box, hold my Option key, and download it to make a duplicate box, and I change, not the text box, if I go to Effects again, Window, Effects, and with this box active, I change the opacity here to 60%. Do you see what happens, that you can see the letters through one another because they're transparent? Yeah.
Couldn't you do the same thing with one text box and leading, like changing the leading?
No.
overlay?
No, because it's the text box that has a different transparency. You're not tinting the letters, you're changing the opacity of the letters. And so in a text box, you can't alter the opacity of the text. You can alter the tint, but not the opacity. Yeah, and your other question was, can I change the leading of my text so they overlap each other? Yes, absolutely. If I wanted, for example, take this word courage, hit a return. I don't know what I've got going on here. Copy, paste, return, paste, return, paste. If I weren't changing their opacity, I could, for example, change the leading of everything, which does answer your question here. Let's say to make them overlap, I could make them overlap because I changed the leading to 48%, yes. And could I just hit a tab right here so they align differently? Sure. Sure I can. Can I change the text? Can I change the tint of this one to pink? Sure. But what happens is, because they all have the same opacity in the box, they're not going to be see-through like the other ones. Okay? Which is why you need different text box. I'm sorry?
Would that happen as well if you did the step and repeat?
Did I show you guys step and repeat before?
I think it's at the end of this one.
It is at the end of this one. Step and repeat, you're going to learn with the raffle ticket. Step and repeat is where you take a box. Let me get rid of this one. And let me take the word courage. This text box is active. Step and repeat is a function that will let you duplicate an image multiple times. So let's say I want to step this box like a stair step, a 1/2 inch down and a 1/2 inch over, and duplicate it 6 times. So I can repeat my count as 6, and I can offset it vertically as a 1/2 inch, and offset it horizontally at a 1/2 inch. And if I preview it, that's what I'm going to get without me hitting my option key duplicating it. Step and repeat, super cool when you want to have something incrementally duplicated. And would that happen? I have separate text boxes. Let's leave it like that. I have separate text boxes. And if I want to change the opacity, let's say, for one box, yes, I can. I would change the opacity of that one box and go to Window, Effects, and change the opacity here. Okay, let's it be see-through.
So this is described as just step and repeat.
Yeah, lots of fun. Any questions about step and repeat or transparency, opacity?
Where did you find step and repeat?
Step and repeat is edit, step and repeat. We're going to do it in this raffle ticket assignment.
Now, when you use step and repeat, would that also replicate marks and bleeds?
When I do step and repeat, will it replicate marks and bleeds? It will replicate guides. Create as a grid, I actually think, and I don't do this very often, it's kind of new to CS maybe 4. Remember, I'm older than dirt, so I started with InDesign that had no CS and no numbers to it.
I had no one to.
Yeah, thanks, honey. I don't feel so bad now because you're young. Does it work with guides? You know what, let me just stop stumbling over it. Let's just find out. So here's a guide, and let's make sure my guides are not locked, okay? Let's just test this out. So let me go to View, and let me go to Guides, and let me make sure that my guides are not locked, which they're not locked, okay? It says Lock Guides here. There's no check mark next to it, so they're not locked. So this guide is active. So let's say I want to create guides that are an inch apart, right? So let's go to step and repeat. Let's make 6 of them. Let's make 8 of them. Let's vertically offset them 0. And let's duplicate them every inch. Oh, it was doing my courage box. Hang on. Let me make my guide active. I believe my guide is active now. All right, let me try this again. Let's go to step and repeat. Let's duplicate it 8 times. Let's offset it vertically 0. It even graded out. Won't let me do it. Won't let me do it. But it will let me horizontally duplicate it. And let's do it. So yes, the answer is yes to guides. And now I could go to View My Guides, and I could lock my guides, and they're set. So how nifty is that? Yeah? It's cool. I actually think it does tell you to do that in this assignment. And I don't do it often enough, but it's very valuable.
Because I was just thinking, if you were to put multiple, say, business cards on one page, wouldn't you want them to all have marks and bleeds?
Oh, you are. Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, gosh, this is like, you know, like Okay, I'll give you the $10 after class, okay, that we agreed upon, because that's the perfect setup for this assignment, which is right there, which is setting up this document with marks and bleeds so you can have 8 raffle tickets on a page and know how to trim them. And exactly, it's exactly it. If you were going to print business cards for yourself at home, you'd want to get, let's say, 10 business cards on an 8.5 by 11 sheet, and you want to have little trim marks for yourself so you can hand trim them even. And if you built the bleed in. So exactly, see what's going on here? And actually what I think I'm going to do is release your screen so you can do this together with me, because it's a big project, it's time consuming, and I think it'll serve you better if we do it together. But yes, the answer is absolutely. Won't it help you with marks and bleeds? Yes. But these are manually created marks and bleeds, not the kind that are the default ones when you click marks and bleeds for a PDF file.
So you would make it in InDesign as opposed to when you're exporting it into a PDF.
Correct. You would make it in InDesign. You'd set up a page with marks and bleeds on it for yourself and not use the default when you create a PDF with marks and bleeds. So I'm going to release your computers right now so you can launch InDesign. And we'll do this together because it's a little clunky, to be quite honest with you. So I'm going to pause this video and let you have time to launch InDesign. And perhaps if you have the CD with you, you might want to pop it in. Otherwise, you don't really need the CD anyway, because just setting up this document is going to make your life much easier, because it's a little bit complicated. Okay, so what we're going to be working on here is, well, first off, let me just come back to the invitation. The invitation's a little redundant. Remember when I talked to you about, did I talk to you about setting up the fold-over card for the Ana Sanchez card and putting your score marks out in the margins?
Yes.
I did, okay. This is the same thing. Again, create a bleed, put the score marks out in, not the margins, I said it wrong, out in the bleed area beyond the trim. Does anybody remember when you make score marks what color they're supposed to be? I'm not sure that they tell you this accurately here.
Registration.
Registration color is accurate. Registration color means that the score marks will show up on every printing plate. Even if you had 100 printing plates, they look black on the screen, but any ink, if it's registration color, the score marks will show up on that. So be sure you set that one up in the same way we had discussed it regarding the Ana Sanchez assignment. Also, call attention here to the fact that that's probably not an M dash, but it's probably an N dash. And also make sure that you set your text box with a margin below the fold. Okay? Everybody clear about that? The other thing I suggest too is make a prototype of this. In other words, I would take a piece of paper, I would fold it in half. I'd say that this is my firefighter image right here on the front. I'd open up my fold over card and notice that I'm putting my text here, because if you notice, if I turn it around, notice my firefighter image is now upside down at the top of the page instead of what looks like at the bottom of the page here. You guys follow that? So keep that in mind. And the reason, and what you would do for this is you could set this up like this, but then notice the text on this page is upside down. So you'd have to rotate it 180 degrees and put it up at the top, all right? Yeah, and I'm not so worried about that. Just make sure you set them up in the right position. We're going to have a fold-over card later in the semester where you're going to have to set it up where they are upside down. We won't nail you if they're not upside down, because I know in the instructions here they don't tell you to do that. And if you sent it to a print shop, the print shop would set it up properly for you. Maybe, hopefully. It's not always the case.
So we're doing the invitation card, not the raffle ticket?
We're not going to do the invitation card. We're doing the raffle tickets. I just wanted to draw attention to it, that's all. Okay, so you may have questions about how you would set up that invitation. I think that's pretty straightforward. Also notice on the invitation that the image does not bleed off the trim. but nonetheless, you're still going to have to create a bleed area for all those score marks to show up. Everybody get that? Any question about that? Nah. Alrighty. All right, so let me come back down here to refer to this PDF file. Our goal here, first off, I'm going to rotate this counterclockwise just to show you what we're looking for. So rotate view counterclockwise. So this is what we're setting up here. So let's look at a few details. There's a few things they do really poorly in this, unfortunately. So we are going to create a text box that says name, address, city, state, zip, phone, and we're going to rotate a text box, okay? We're also going to place this little graphic, and we're going to set up the text here. What we don't see on this is that this tear off, there's a tear off right here where they're going to create a perforation when it's printed. After it's printed, they're going to use score marks that we're going to show as a guide and indicate that there's a perforation there. So you can tear off the little stub and put it in the basket so we can win a firefighter.
That machine's fun, let me tell you.
What's that?
The folders.
The folder's fun, right? That was Sunny's job at the print shop. Okay, so we've looked at that. Let's see down here now. I got to rotate this back, so let's go back to view, rotate clockwise. All right, so we're going to set up a document 8.5 by 11. It's going to be wide, not tall. Our margins are 1/4 of an inch, and we want 1/4 of an inch bleed. So that's what I'm going to follow because I actually do follow this one pretty carefully. So let me move it over here. Let me close that one. Let me go to File, New, make a new document. It's letter size, turn off facing pages, make it landscape orientation, make our margins, it says 1/4 of an inch, and it says give not 1/8 of an inch bleed, but 1/4 of an inch bleed all around. It doesn't say anything about columns or guides or anything beyond that right now, so this is where I'm going to go, right? Then it says we're going to create guides on this document. We're going to make 4 rows without a gutter, and we're going to make 2 columns without a gutter, and we're going to calculate these guides not from the trim of the page, but from the margins. Okay, so let's just do that. So 4 rows, no gutter, 2 columns, no gutter, calculated from the margins. So we do that by going to Layout, Create Guides, and we're creating guides so we can set up our document. So we're going to click Fit Guides to Margin. We're going to create, what did I say, 4 rows, 2 columns. Okay, 4 rows, 0 gutter, 2 columns, 0 gutter. And you can click Preview and see what we're getting right here. Everybody follow that? Let me leave that on the screen for you. How did I get to create guides? Layout, create guides. Do you want me to turn the lights down more? Are you guys okay?
A little bit. Please.
Better? Okay, everybody good with this? This is the part you want to make sure you're pretty on target with. Okay. Yeah, I can hold on a second. Okay. Now, you want to add additional vertical guidelines, and this is, look at the XY coordinates here, at 2 1/4 inches and at 7.5 inches. So what we do is make sure that our 0, 0 coordinate is set in the upper left corner, so we just double click this corner of our ruler. It resets our 0. we use our reference point up here, make sure it's in the upper left corner. And then we drag a guide at 2 1/4 and 7 1/2. So let's do this. Drag a guideline and bring it over to 2 1/4. Drag a second guideline and bring it to 7 1/2. Okay. Now we've set up a document, so first thing I always do is save it. Once I've done anything that I want, save it, call it raffle tickets or your name and whatever this one is. This is, let's see, 7C. Ready? Then here's the stuff that gets a little tricky. So here's our goal, if you can look at my screen right here. I'm going to blow this up for you. You might want to look at what your goal is, because if you know where you're headed with this, it's going to be clearer what you're trying to accomplish. So what our purpose is here, our purpose is to create a crop mark in the upper left corner. And then our purpose, if you look at this one, there's a crop mark here, a score perforation mark here, a crop mark here, a score perforation mark here, and a crop mark there. Does everybody get that? And those crop marks are going to go at the top of the page and they're going to go at the bottom of the page. And then as we scroll down a little, we're going to create trim marks also at every guideline, because we're going to have 4 rows of raffle tickets, right? Does everybody follow what we're getting to? The purpose of what we're doing is we're creating the trim marks on our 8.5 by 11 page, because there's no way that if we hit the PDF marks and bleeds, we're going to get what we need. So we have to build our manual trim marks. And this is exactly what Thomas was saying about business cards. This is exactly how you'd set up, not the same measurements, but it's exactly the same purpose for setting up business cards. So let's look at our goal here. It's pretty straightforward. Let's go back to our InDesign document. And if you go to make your stroke active, and you go to the line tool, for example, this is the simplest way to do it, and you hold your shift key down, start out by the bleed area at the 1/4 inch mark, make sure you're at the 1/4 inch mark, and hold your shift key down and drag a line. Don't let it touch the margin, because that's essentially our trim area. Okay, can you all see where I put it? So it's at the 1/4 inch mark. And if you want to make sure you're exactly at the 1/4 inch mark, look at your XY coordinate and it'll show you you're at the 1/4 inch mark. All right, everybody get that? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stroke my line a 1/2 point. But I'm going to make mine super chunky so you can see it, but make yours a 1/2 point. And make the color of that stroke registration color. Okay, does everybody get that?
So what's registration color?
Swatches, registration color.
What's the difference between that and
It looks black to you, but registration color, when you do printing plates and the colors separate for printing, it's going to show up on every plate. It means it is used for registering every printing plate. Okay? Now, the easiest way to do this, honestly, for me, rather than that step and repeat, would be to click on this stroke, hold your Option key down and your Shift key, and drag this over to the guideline at the 2 1/4 mark. That's why you put the guideline in there, right? And then, honestly, the easiest way to do this now is marquee both of these. Marquee both strokes that you've drawn. And with them both active, hold your Option key down and your Shift key and drag this over there.
How big did you make? 1/2 point?
Make them a 1/2 point. And then for your final one, click off of that. Just grab this one stroke here, hold my Option key down, Shift key, drag it here. So can you all see that I have 5 lines drawn? Are we good? Everybody hanging with me? Nod. Shake your head. Something like that. Do you want me to pause?
Yes, please.
Okay, so right now you should have all of your vertical trim marks at the top of your page. What I suggest you do is highlight using your black arrow, using your selection tool, select the trim mark that's at the 2 1/4 mark, and hold your shift key down and select the one that's at the 1/2 inch mark. Because those two, oops, I wasn't holding it, my shift. Because these two right here, the one at the 2 1/4 and the one at 7 1/2, they're going to become dashed, and that's because they're for perforation. It indicates a score, and we would make notes in our artwork telling them that we're going to want to perforate the raffle tickets. So you're going to make those dashed. So now if you look at this document and we look at it using the bleed area, you can see you have a solid line, a dashed line, a solid line, a dashed line, a solid line. Okay? Now, after you've done that, then you marquee, which means drag not a literal rectangle, but a rectangle using your selection tool around all of your trim marks. So they're all active. Click on one of the trim marks and then hold your option key and shift key and drag them down below the margin and into the bleed area down here. So you've created your trim marks down at the bottom of your page also. And save your file again. Command S, save your file.
Just capture them all.
I captured them all in one swoop, right? All right, everybody with me on that? And now we're going to create our horizontal marks, and this is where we can use step and repeat easily. Because right now, if I take one of my lines, take my line tool, I go to the 1/4 inch mark outside in the bleed area, hold my shift key down so I get a straight line, I constrain proportions, and I drag a line almost to that pink margin guide. And there is no color selected, but I think I drew it. There it is. And again, make it a 1/2 point. I'm going to make it chunky so you can see it. But you make it a 1/2 point, and you stroke it with registration color.
That's really important.
Really important. And we have a way to know whether you set it up as registration color by looking at separations. So make sure that you choose to do that. Then, with this horizontal stroke active, let me see the distance between these. Let's see. 2 inches. Okay. So make this horizontal stroke active, and now, this is the fun, we go to step and repeat, edit, step and repeat. Make sure your stroke is active, the horizontal one. And then we get our step and repeat window, and we're going to duplicate it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And we're going to vertically offset it. Okay, well, let me do it yet. We're going to vertically offset it 2 inches. We're going to horizontally offset it 0. And we're going to duplicate it 4 times. How'd I get there? I went to layout. I went to edit, step and repeat. Just make sure your stroke is active though before you do this. You can't activate it after. And then you get this window and set your vertical offset 2 inches, set your horizontal offset 0, and repeat count is 4. And you can preview it and it should show up just like you see here on the side of my screen. Y'all see that?
Sorry, what step are you on?
I'm setting where am I on the PDF file, you mean?
I mean, what are we stepping in?
We're stepping and repeating the horizontal trim mark right up here, Lauren. See that horizontal trim mark? Did you draw it yet?
Yes.
Okay, so make it active, and we're going to repeat that so we have our horizontal trim on the left side of our page.
I'll try.
Okay, everybody good? All right. Now, Again, make sure these are all active. So you could just drag a little marquee down the side of your screen so all of those strokes are active. And again, with them active, click on one on a line, hold your mouse down, hold your Option key and your Shift key down, and drag them across your page beyond the margin guide into the bleed area, right like that. So you've created all your horizontal trims. They may need some help down there. Damien, you need a little help? Damien?
Yeah, my lines are on.
Okay. Okay, and then once you've done that successfully, save your document. Raise your hand if you don't have all your guides drawn yet. Okay, I'm going to pause this for a sec. Okay, and back to my recording. Let's go back to our PDF file and look at our instructions. So if you look at your page here, this is really what your page should look like, just like the PDF file. And let me zoom out here and see what our next step is. All right, so now, I'm going to look at some things here. We're going to make a new layer to put the text on, it says. And we want to call it photo text. And they want us to make a 2-inch square text frame and inset the text frame 1/8 of an inch on all sides, and on the bottom inset it 0.3125. And the text, it says bottom aligns. And all of these details, the way they tell us to do this, is actually pretty important. However, there's a few things here I disagree with. But right now I'm going to highlight my text, which gives me name, address, city, state, zip, phone. Okay? And I'm going to copy it. Command C is copy. I'm going to go back to my document in InDesign. I'm going to do what they said. I'm going to make sure my stroke is not active. So I'm going to click off of everything and make sure I have no active stroke. And I'm going to create a text box. And the text box, they said, if I go back to my selection tool, the text box is supposed to be 2 inches square, exactly, so 2 inches wide, 2 inches tall. And then with my text tool, I'm going to click in this 2-inch text box, and I'm going to paste what I copied, which was that city, state, zip thing. And I'm going to come back here, and I can't see it. For some reason, there's an overflow. And again, it says to make my type Myriad Pro condensed. And I don't actually think they tell you the size of the type. But when I do a form, my type is never larger than 8 points. And honestly, my type is usually like 6 or 7 points. So I'm going to come back to my InDesign document. I can't see my text, but I'm going to go to Edit, Select All. I'm going to choose Myriad Pro Condensed as my font. I think that's what they tell you to do. I'm going to make my type, let's make it 8 points so you guys can see it. And I'm going to make it, I don't think they even tell you the leading. So I kind of disagree with this a little bit, so let's kind of wing it here. You might want to follow my guides when we do this. So let me zoom in. How do I get this? I drew a text box that's 2 inches square. Okay, now one of the things I never do, I do not underline things by hitting the underline bar. I do not. So get rid of it. Because you see right now there's a break in that underline bar, and that break is going to print, and you don't want it to print. Okay, so with this, so take a look up here. So the text box, remember it said make text frame options. It said 1/8 of an inch everywhere, I believe. except in one spot. It said, in the text box, make an 1/8 of an inch inset, but at the bottom, make it 0.3125, and I know there's a reason for that. So let me come back here. Now I can break my chain link, and at the bottom, I can make it 3.125. And it also said, align the text to the bottom of the box. Everybody with me there?
No, mine's bigger than
Might copy the lines.
Yeah, mine copied the lines too, so you're going to have to manually delete it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you want us to manually type
Delete the lines
manually delete?
because they're going to print funky. How am I doing, Ben?
But yours is
Am I doing okay? You're with me, huh? Okay.
Yours is manual.
Do y'all still need a little time?
Yeah.
Deleting the line.
Y'all look like you need a little time. Carlos, how am I doing? We're good? We're good, okay. All right, then I'm going to keep forging ahead so we don't run out of time, because we will. Okay, so now it says manually delete the lines. So what I'm going to do, because I like controlling things when I design something, I'm going to click OK. And they don't tell you the leading for this at all. They don't. So I'm just going to visually look and see what we've got going on here. And they haven't told us the leading for our type, so to me, I'm going to see what happens when I hit 18-point leading for this 8-point type. And that looks pretty good. 18-point leading is a pretty easy form to fill out. The other thing I want to do for my form is I want to set up paragraph rules. Now you've already done that. You've done that numerous times. So again, I go to the paragraph panel, type, and I find paragraph right there. And with my text active, all of it highlighted, I pull out the paragraph rules, and I'm going to underline each of these lines for name, address, city, state, zip. So on rule below, I'm going to select rule below. I'm going to turn the rule on, and I'm going to make it a 1/2 point rule. And I'm going to offset it just a little. Now you have a few ways to control this. You might want to just look up here and follow this. I'm going to offset it a little bit. I don't have to, because what I can do is this. I can say OK, and I have an underline. But I can click on name, for example, and I can go to paragraph rule, which is Command-Shift-J. Nope, sorry. Command-J. No. Now I've forgotten. What's the shortcut?
Did you just use the underline tool to underline everything?
No, I didn't use the underline tool. I used paragraph rules.
I mean, type that back up.
Did you say we're supposed to make a new layer for this?
You don't have to. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't.
Where's paragraph rules?
Paragraph rules is the pullout of the paragraph panel, and the shortcut key, I said it wrong, which is Command-Option-J, I think. Right, that's what it is. And notice this, though. When you look up here, I have my paragraph rules. My cursor's only on the word name on that paragraph, and I'm going to left indent my rule so it starts after the E. And I can click OK. I click on the line that has address, and I do Command-Option-J. It pulls up my paragraph panel, and I'm going to left indent so my rule starts after the word address. Command-Option-J for city, indent after city. Okay. This one's tricky. The one with city, state, zip is tricky, and I'll show you what I do with that one. I'm going to create a tab mark for, I'm going to click tab to move over zip, but I'm going to go to type and tabs, and I'm going to move my tab bar all the way down over here because the zip is probably halfway on that line. And I click on state now, and I do Command-Option-J for the paragraph rules. And I'm going to indent my line on the left, and I can indent my line on the right so it doesn't underline the zip. This one's a little tricky, right? and I say, okay, I'm going to need a line. I'm going to have to put a line in for my zip, and I'll show you how you could do that. And then I click here on phone. I go to Command Option J, which pulls up my paragraph rules. And again, indent on the left. And I'm going to say okay. And I'm going to keep going so I can finish this video, and then if you miss it, we'll have it posted so you can finish up. And then what I do here is a little different. So what I'll probably do is I'll take my line tool, I'll set it right on top of the state line to create a line. I'm going to make it a half a point line. You can't see it. It's going to be black. I'm going to grab my selection tool, click on it. I'm going to hold my shift key and drag it over so it right aligns with all these other rules that are here, and drag it. So now I've got this line and a text box. Because when I make forms, I don't like hitting the underline bar because it doesn't print well. And now what I'm going to do is marquee the text box and that line, and I'm going to group them because I want to make sure that that line doesn't get left behind, the one that's extended beyond zip. So I'm going to go to Object and I'm going to group it. So now I have the line and the text box as one set of items. And let me zoom out here. And basically what you're going to do with this is just like this diagram. You're going to rotate it 90 degrees and it's going to sit right in this square that we've defined by our guide. So if I come back and I take this group text box and I rotate it counterclockwise, and it's going to nest into those 2-inch guides, right? I don't have to position it very carefully. It just nested and snapped to guides. And then I'm going to save my document. And you might just want to watch now so we don't run out of time because this stuff isn't going to take you very long, really. Here, let me see if I can highlight this firefighters. And I don't think I can. No, I can't. See if I can highlight this firefighter. Ah, this one I can. Let's see what it gave me here. All right, let me just copy that. Let me come back over here, and now I'm going to have to make another text box right here. And again, no problem with making a text box between your guides. That's what they're there for, right? It's going to snap to these guides. And with my text tool, I can type what I just copied, Annual Firefighters Raffle. Let's see if it lets me copy the rest. I'll copy the second line. This isn't that critical because you guys know how to do this. And paste it. And then obviously this is centered text, so if I select all my text, Command A, I go to the paragraph panel, I align it centered. This, I don't know what the text is. I just noticed it was an italic bold. So here's a bold italic. I'm going to make it large. I'm going to set the leading at some specific size. And then this line of type, here I'm going to make it smaller so it's on one line and increase the leading. And I'm going to inset my text box here, so my text, I nested my text box here, snapping to my guides. So I may as well go to Object, Text Frame Options, and chain link it and inset my text so it doesn't touch where I'm trimming this ticket. And so I inset my text and I said okay. And then let's just look at this graphic. Notice there's the little firefighter graphic right here on our raffle ticket. Come back to my InDesign document, click off of my text box, go to File, Place, go to the raffle ticket folder, which was right here, locate the firefighter artwork. My cursor is going to load with it, and I'm going to have it align under the word annual and end after raffle, but it looks a little too big. I see why it's a little too big. I'm going to move it up so it doesn't hit my trim. I'm going to go to Object Arrange, and I'm going to send it to the back. Sunny, you're anticipating my every move. And it's a little too tight there, so I'm going to use my white arrow, my Content tool, and I'm going to decrease the size from 100% here. Make sure that proportions are constrained and my chain link is closed. And I'm going to incrementally, oops, I don't want that box. I grabbed the wrong one. Let me go backwards so my firefighters are right here.
You sent the firefighter to the back.
I sent it to the back, right. So instead of 136%, I'm just going to go to 100% and kind of move it and center it. And now I'm going to use my black arrow, not accidentally click on this circle here, but click somewhere on the side and send my photo to the back, object to range, send to back. And now I have essentially my firefighter ticket. I'm obviously missing a little text, but you guys will fix that. And this is the key here. Here's all the fun. All we really need to do is this. We're going to marquee both, or it's 3 boxes, the form, the graphic, and the text. And actually what I would do at this point when you're done with this and it's all pretty and beautiful, I'm going to group it, which is object, group, and then I'm going to use my favorite tool, one of my favorites, or my favorite function. Remember, these are 2 inches offset. So with this active, I go to Edit, Step and Repeat. I'm going to duplicate it 4 times. I actually only need to duplicate it 3. And I'm going to vertically offset it 2 inches, horizontally offset it 0, and I'm good to go. I click OK. And now I marquee with my black arrow, my selection tool, all 4 of these so they're active. And again, I go to Edit, Step, and Repeat. And I want to repeat it once because all 4 are active. I don't change anything vertically, that's 0. And horizontally is probably 5 1/4, maybe. Let's see if I'm right. That looks pretty right to me. So I'm going to duplicate it once, step and repeat it once, 5 1/4 inches. And now I've got my document set up. And if we look at this without our guides distracting us, you notice that you've got your trim for each row for the printer. This was Sunny's job. Sunny used to take stacks of printed paper, and big stacks, and he'd use the guillotine cutter. So he'd square it off. Describe it, Sunny. Come up here.
We'd have to,
Come up here, because you got to be near this little microphone so everybody can hear
they're
you.
like sheets like this big, mock-ups of like 8 pages at a time, and you gotta pinch them, get some air into them so that they jog and flatten,
What do you mean by jog?
Jogging is pretty much when you're doing this. You're making sure all the edges are nice and straight and flat. And everything bumps up against your bumper nice and evenly so you get nice clean cuts. And then once you cut your piece cut, you send it over to the next finishing, whether it be we used to call it the Mueller, the staples, the saddle stitcher, which basically it gets. Well, no, you go to the folder first before that, and the fold this into like 8 pieces, which is really weird because you got this 8-piece layup, so you got all these pages and they make no sense at all until they fold and then they're all in order. But then some of those get too thick or they crack depending on what ink and stuff or finishing polymers they use on them. I guess I don't know if they're polymers, but the scoring actually basically just aids in the folding so that you don't have all these weird folds and stuff. And the perforations are these little. Basically, you're sitting it through, what do they call them? Big cylinders, like big metal cylinders that you adjust them by fractions of an inch to just let one little piece of paper through. And then you have little wheels on there, and the solid wheel will do your scores, yeah. And then the perforations are made with basically like little ninja stars, and it has little picos on it that poke the paper.
Good description. That's a great description. That was Sunny's job. He'd trim and score and fold all these sheets. So without you being there telling them how to set this up, the black solid lines tell them those are cut marks where you cut through. And the dotted lines, the dashed lines, mean that you're scoring it. And we would indicate something else for folding it. For perforating it. Probably what I would do is I would go back to my original document setup here. And I would go to more options, and I would create a slug at the top that's, let's say, 2 inches, which makes our document look like this if we show our slug and our bleed. And right here, I make a little text box, and I'd say perforate. Just like that. And then when Sonny saw the printed sheet, he'd know that that wasn't a score mark. He'd know it was a perforation. And I hold my Option key down and perforate that one too. Now I've given them instructions and I don't need to be there to tell them what the heck to do. So I'm going to pause this. Actually, I'm going to stop.